We're going to, and it's recording, just so you know. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to briefly go over an outline of what the COC competition is and important dates to keep in mind, and then where to go for more information. And then David Mulig will be going over the application itself and how to fill it out, and again, where to go for more information. If Nora, would you allow me to share my screen real quick, and then I'll get started on my presentation.
You should be set now.
Awesome, thank you. So you're seeing my desktop. Let me bring this up real quick. I'm always slow. Okay, so just give you an overview of the competition. And please, along the way in my presentation or in David's, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. Just to give you so we have two funding availabilities. One is our DV bonus, which is domestic violence specific funding. That's $483,828. This is available for one, but no more than 3 programs. The types of projects that can be funded with these dollars are rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, supportive services, service only for coordinated entry, and then an expansion of an existing renewal project. So if there are any renewal clients on here, to expand it to DV population beds. And then of course the new projects that in total we have 161,276. And the type of projects that can be funded with these dollars are permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and joint transitional housing, and permanent housing / rapid rehousing components. So the DV bonus, that's again for domestic violence specifically, working with those populations, and then the wider populations, these new projects is available. More information can be found on our notice of funding opportunity document, which is found on our website, and which I'll go over again at the end. So how does the NOFO process work? Well, we have it's a 2-tier system. In tier 1, primarily we have HMIS, which is the data management, coordinated entry, renewal projects, reallocated projects, and then first time renewal projects. Those are always tiered at the highest. And then at the bottom, we have these new projects, which you'll be going for, being the new projects for all clients, and then DV specific, the bonus. And then we do have some low scoring projects from tier 1 can fall into tier 2. For more information on the tiering, you can find that in our how to apply starting on page 4. And that's a great breakdown of everything that goes into our ranking renewal process, which I definitely encourage you to check out and see how projects are scored and ranked. And why is tiering important? Well, you're here for the grantee competition, those tier 1s and tier 2, with the application that we'll be going over today. But the COC is also in a competition with other COCs. So the ROCC is writing its own grant, which it sends off to us. Oh, excuse me. And so these, is that me? These bonus funding, the bonus funding is non-guaranteed. We rate and rank all of the projects that come in that tier 1 and tier 2. We send that list with our narrative application, and that is what is used to be ranked against other COCs. And then our COC score is what is used to determine final funding amounts. So for example, say we have a good scoring project and we get all of tier 1 and then a portion of tier 2, those projects that are ranked the lowest in tier 2 likely won't get funded, but the ones at the top of tier 2 would get funded. Some projects may straddle. Again, it's all broken down into that document that I discussed earlier, that how to apply on page 4. It's a bit of a complicated thing. I don't want to get too much into it today, but please email me if you want to know more and check out the document. If you're interested in more information about the COC competition itself, us against other COCs, please go to the HUD website and you can see it there. And these slides will be shared, so you'll be able to get the link. So going back to the grantee competition, kind of the overview of the process and how we're going to go moving forward. From now until the 30th of September, please come to the trainings and office hours. You're going to want to create and or update an eSnaps account and fill out all the necessary information, but please do not hit submit. Wait until we are able to review all of the applications and we'll submit them at the same time. And then you want to submit the NOFO application packets to this email here, oregonbos@gmail.com, and include all the necessary supplemental information. From the end of September to the 11th of October, these applications will be scored and ranked in that tiering process by the review and ranking committee. The score and rank will be shared with all the submitters, at which point you'll have the opportunity to appeal the decision, be it your score or where you ended up on the ranking. And then at the end of the timeline, we have the final review of the application Z-snaps, at which point you'll be able to hit that submit button. Please attend our ROCC quarterly meeting on the 20th of October. That's where we'll do a discussion of the process and of our priority listing. And then we'll do a final submission in these SAPs all together. Some important dates. I kind of outlined this a little bit earlier, but come to our office hours. We have in 2 weeks on Tuesday from 10 to 12. We have the office hours. Dave and I will be here, and Justina will to answer any questions that you may have, issues in these snaps, issues with the application. And then all the project proposal packets are again due at the end of September. The first notification of your application score and rank will happen October 11th. That's when you first hear from us. And then the final submission is on the 10th of November, excuse me. And this is all broken down in our 2021 NOFO timeline. So you'll get all of the important dates, who to go, what contact, who to go for what questions. So definitely check out this document, and I have it taped up on my wall.
You keep fading in and out, Caleb, just so that you're aware.
Okay. Sorry about that. So where do you go for more information? Please go to our website, oregonbos.org. And if you go to the HUD competition page, that's where you'll be able to get this COC competition timeline, the how to apply, new application instructions, all of the applications, and then the announcement, the new DV and bonus project, which will break down in more detail the amounts that are available and what is allowed to be funded. We'll have this training along with others on our YouTube page. So definitely look at there. You can go to YouTube and search for Rural Oregon Continuum of Care. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me and I can get you the best person to answer them. So that's the end of my presentation here. As I mentioned, David is going to take it from here and go over the application. If you have any questions at all throughout the presentation, please put it in the chat, and then we'll do our best to answer them. But if we don't get to them, then we'll get to them at the end in an open discussion. So with that, David, if you want to take it away.
Great, thank you, Caleb. Hello, everyone. I am happy to be here to help go over what the application requirements are and to share with you this new process that the ROCC has this year and how we can best support you in going through your application, answering the questions, and then having a consistent scoring process so that everyone who applies is going to be rated and scored in a very, very, what we believe is a very fair format. And so as I go through this, I want you to just know that we want to be transparent in how we ask the questions, why we're asking, how we're scoring, again, so that you have the opportunity to submit a proposal that is tip top and can be scored highly. All right, so I'm going to be just kind of bringing in and bringing out some documents that you probably have available to kind of help me through this process and showing you this. So the first one I'm going to show, go ahead and do this. I'm going to pull over. So hopefully you can see a Word document that has the new COC application instructions. Okay, so this is a great document to start out because it's a supplement to the actual application. And what we wanted to do is go through, we have questions that we'll talk about in just a moment, but this is going to explain why we're asking those questions. And know that the questions that we're asking are really questions coming from HUD. All right, so we need to have the questions answered because HUD asks us to get the answers from your applications. Makes total sense. So a little bit of a brief overview of, and basically Caleb has gone through this, but I'm going to kind of scroll down a little bit. And you can see here in some areas, it's basically just add your application information. When you get down to project type, a little bit more detail, there's going to be a drop down. Here are the examples of the drop downs you can choose from. Simple, continue. And like I said, I just want to go through this really fast because I want to get actually to the application. But here I just wanted to show you, if you have any questions, I'm just realizing I have an old one of these, Caleb. If you have any questions, you can go to your instructions and see, maybe we have the answer here. And if we don't have the answer here, then Caleb is the person that you would want to talk to. All right. So just kind of wanted to really show you here everything, descriptions, the points, the number of questions being asked, the different sections. And then finally, at the very end, I want to show, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, exactly how your application is going to be scored. Okay. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but it's all in your instructions so that, again, that you have everything we hope that you need to write the best application possible. All right, so let's jump to the application itself. And hopefully by now you've all seen this. All right, so the application is in Excel format, and we've created a template for you to be able to use to really track the process you have gone through to make sure, okay, I've added this document. Okay, I've answered this question. And they're going to be in the form of yes or no. And again, that's just for you to help track what's needed for the application. Anything here in green on the application is an area that you can change. You can add to, answer questions. So of course, we want to know your agency, your contacts. Over here for agency type, there's a drop down that I mentioned. Simply just, are you a nonprofit? Are you a public housing authority? Any of these choices. And simply start out with filling out your basic contact information. When you get to the application type, most of you, I believe, are going to be a new application. Maybe not, but most of you will be selecting new reallocation. If you're doing a new DV project, there it is. If you're doing a new CE project, make your choice, all right? Simple, simple. And then, of course, the total amount that you request. All right. Section 1, threshold requirements. These requirements have to all be yes. If you have one of these that say no, you are not going to be able to submit your application, your proposal. All right. So the 4, are you one of the applicants or the type of applicants or agency that can apply? And there's your description. And of course, up earlier, I said you would do a drop down. If it's a new project, is it a permanent supportive housing? Is it serving chronically homeless or rapid rehousing, individuals, EV? But they have to be, your proposal has to fit in one of these categories. Again, just let's change that to a yes. All right, HMIS implementation agreement. You are required if you receive COC funding, you will have to use the Homeless Management Information System, which is Service Point. If you're not using it, don't worry about it. We've got some really skilled people here on this call, on this, here that can sit with you and work with your agency to learn how to do that. And then finally, all COC projects also have to agree to the coordinated entry process. And coordinated entry is essentially, I'm going to just give a high level description. Coordinated entry is the opportunity for your organization and others to help generate a list of all of those who are experiencing homelessness in your community. And in that list, it's a prioritization based on need. Coordinated entry is a requirement of HUD. So if you receive this application, if you receive your grant for this, you will also be participating in adding your participants into coordinated entry so that they're going to be on the coordinated entry list. Okay. This year, we also have here in red that you will attach, we ask that you attach an HMIS agency agreement. And I just go ahead and show you what that looks like. So it's a Northwest Social Services connection. It's basically saying your agency will participate in using the Homeless Management Information System. Okay, so that document's there, fill it out, sign it, and attach it to your application. Coordinated entry, we also have an agreement that says you will participate exactly in the coordinated entry process as I described it. A little bit of background about coordinated entry, some information about how you can find out what's going on in your community. And I want to emphasize here that it would be to your advantage if you're not a community action agency to connect to your local community action agency in your area. Okay, they are responsible. They're the leads for the coordinated entry process. If you do not know who your community action agency in your community is, here is a link that you can follow. Again, it's going to be in the ROCC coordinated entry agreement. Here's a link you can follow that will take you to a website that lists all the community action agencies and where they're located. All right. So if you're in Coos and Curry, we suggest that you go to ORCA and contact them and start collaborating and talking with them about how you can coordinate the work that you're going to be doing together, because we will ask this information in your application. And then finally, if you want more information from HUD about coordinated entry, but again, essentially, this is just an agreement from your agency representative saying that if you receive COC funding, that you will participate in coordinated entry. All right, so as I said, threshold requirements, these all have to be yes. If one of them is no, this application will not be accepted. So, don't submit it. Okay. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to Caleb and we'll give you a little bit more information about that. Okay. Section 2, proposal documentation. Obviously, yes, you want to have your application proposal. Second thing is you want to draft up a budget of what you believe will be the costs that match your total grant amount. And then any other supporting documents. And when we get to the questions, you'll see that there are some areas where we'll ask you a question and you might have some really good backup documentation. And we, ask and we suggest if you want to add that as other supporting documents, please feel free to do so. Great. So the front page really is, here's all the basic information. Have your agency director sign it, your COC or whoever's going to run the project. And then if you have someone who's writing this proposal, have them sign it also. Now let's move to the application itself. These are the questions and the points that are allowed are will be given, the total points in that area that will be given for these questions. As I said earlier, this is your checklist. These are the questions, and there's going to be the yes or no just to kind of help you track if you've already answered the question. I will say when I show you the scoring template, each question we go through will be scored. Okay, so I highly recommend answer the question even if you're not sure about the question, if that makes any sense. Answer the question because each question is scored. First question, total points 10. This is really about, hey, is your project meeting an unmet need? Right? Yes or no, that's fine. Show us. Okay, show us by giving us documentation, how your agency's already documented it. I mean, I would say even if you have newspaper articles, whatever you can give us that shows it's meeting an unmet need. Very, very important for us to have that. All right, the next section is about your project quality. And is it appropriate for COC? And are you ready or can you be ready to implement it within a reasonable time? And the total for this entire section is worth 45 points. First one, population, 10 points. This is really asking, what is your population? And how will you prioritize anyone who's going to be in your project? Move it up a little bit. So who it is, eligibility, and how do you prioritize? Number two, extremely important for us and for HUD is how are you going to address racial equity? Okay, so how have you or will you address racial disparities affecting individuals and families? Very, very important question. Right? Second part, project design, 10 points. Here we just want to know who's going to be on it. You may not have hired someone, but who's going to be or what's the position in the project? How are they currently or how will they be trained so they can meet the goals of your project? Have you asked your clients or participants, had them involved in the creation of your project? Do you have examples that show that your project is inclusive of and accessible to all eligible clients? So anyone who comes to you who's eligible, do you have a process that shows that you are being inclusive and they can apply? And finally, please share with us what relationships you have with other community agencies where you can make a referral. Okay, and we want you to list those and what those services are provided. Right, because we understand your agency won't be able to do everything potentially. So who do you have a relationship and how do you refer? All right, project outcome. These are very specific HUD outcomes. All right, so we're asking you to show us based on HUD requirements. First one, how have you or will you ensure that formerly homeless individuals receiving assistance remain housed during the operating year? All right, so if someone is housed in your project, what is the process? How will you help ensure they remain housed? The next two are about employment and financial income and non-income sources. How will you ensure that you're doing what you can to make sure that your client and or participant is able to increase their employment and or increase their financial income, as well as non-income sources? Right, so HUD tracks any change when someone is in your project around financial increases and non-income sources. Okay. 5 points for housing. Where will your participants reside? And how will this housing be obtained? Are case managers you're gonna have a case manager find it? Are they gonna find it? What about your outreach to landlords and property owners to help secure housing? All right. I know many of you have a low rental rate, housing rate. How are you going to outreach to make sure that those in your project can find secure housing? And then please give us an example of any successes that you've had doing outreach in your community to find housing opportunities. All right. Next is your policies and procedures. And this is getting more into your agency's policies and procedures. It's going into risk factors. How is your experience, or what is your experience managing fiscal grants, fiscally and operationally? And here, because COC follows a HERF required policy and procedure, you know, and I won't go into what HERF is, but it's a definition of homelessness and how homeless programs can operate. I did make a list here, or I gave you a list of what those policies and procedures and guidance, conflict of interest, participation, fair housing. Please just respond. You have a conflict of interest policy in your agency. What about homeless persons participation? What about fair housing? What does your agency have in place? What policy do you have in place to make sure that these are checked off? All right. And finally, in this section, it's for 5 points, project readiness. These questions really are saying, if it's a brand new project, what is the timeline for getting it started? If it's a project you already have, when will you start being able to lease units, or when will the assistance begin? And the last question is, what do you think will be some of the obstacles in being able to implement your project? All right, so, you know, lack of resources and housing. You know, these environmental and zoning issues are kind of interesting, especially if you're building, you know, something, but it may be relevant also to your project. So what obstacles might get in your way of implementing your project on a timely basis? All right, next section, homeless management information participation. And as I said, you know, you may not be using an HMIS right now, perfectly fine. What you have here are 3 different scenarios for your agency. And depending on what's true for your agency, that's the questions, or that's the list of questions you will answer. So for instance, if you're an agency that does not use an HMIS, you'll answer these questions, these 4 questions, which is essentially who's going to be responsible for it when you get it. Since you don't have an HMIS, how have you determined the effectiveness of your project? And do you have a data quality improvement plan? And how do you collect your data now? So recognizing you may not have HMIS, you are probably still doing a lot of this work. We just want to know how. All right, next one. Maybe you are using a homeless management information system, because there's several out there, but you're not using what we're using at the ROCC, which is called Service Point. Right? So if you're not using Service Point, but you are using a HUD compatible HMIS database, you will answer these 4 questions. Okay, and these 4 questions are asking, how are you using the HMIS compatible database? And how will you ensure that your agency will also be able to implement Service Point, because Service Point is a requirement for us. And then since you're not using Service Point, how have you used your data to determine effectiveness? And please share with us your data quality improvement plan around data. And finally, the last scenario that may or may not be true is you currently use Service Point. And many of you do, and I see some of you, I don't recognize your agency, so you probably don't. And here it's explain how you use it for projects. How are you using the data to determine your effectiveness? And what is your data quality improvement plan? Okay. So again, whatever's true for your agency currently, just answer those questions and skip the others. All right, past performance, 15 points. So these questions really are exactly what that means. Describe a project that you currently have that's similar to the one that you're wanting to implement. Tell us what your experience is in operating that project. Give us backup documentation of that success. And then how much was your grant? And in that grant, how much did you spend of it in your grant year? Okay, so just tell us. If the project's new, give us an example of other projects that you have operated that are similar and the experience that you have. Okay. Move along a little bit. Agency experience. This again is going back to risk of your agency and operating a COC grant. An example, if you have another federally funded grant with federal guidelines, what is your agency's financial procedure for managing grants? What are your qualifications for the agency staff who are managing your grants? Have you handled grants of a large or similar size without difficulty? Or have you had some challenges? And if you've had challenges, just explain them, right? You just want to have an explanation. And then we want to know if you have any current audit findings, if they've been resolved. If they have not been resolved, just simply say, not simply say, explain where you are in the process. And then new this year, which was not surprising, is HUD wants to know, how has your agency addressed COVID-19 in your area? And looking at their examples, this could be, how have you made vaccination available to your geographical region? You know, are your emergency shelters open and available, you know, with safety COVID practices? You know, those are some examples that you can get directly from the HUD COC application information, right? So how has your agency addressed COVID-19? Right, now we're getting into some of the areas that may or may not be familiar to you. It has to do with COCs, which is our continuum of care. In our case, it's the Oregon balance of state. First one is your project in alignment with the COC priorities? And the COC priorities are not our priorities, not our Oregon balance of state, they're HUD priorities. Okay, and I listed here, you know, I guess 8 or 10 different examples of the system performance measures that HUD requires data on. All right, so length of time a person's been homeless. How many of those that you worked with returned, who exited that you find actually returned to homelessness, number of people homeless, income growth. So look at these examples and just explain to us any information that you have that can show any performance in these areas. Okay, they may not be exact, but you know, please address some of these. And then the last question in that is, does your agency currently participate in our ROCC, the Oregon Balance of State, trainings, our meetings? Are you on committees? And if not, what are your plans to do so? All right. If you're not participating, how are you going to start participating? And if you are, explain how you are participating. Great. And here's a little bit more about coordinated entry. Please share with us how you would incorporate coordinated entry standards These come directly from HUD. Coordinated entry, how will you ensure that you're prioritizing the most vulnerable, those who have low barriers to entry? Housing first, which is housing first before, housing someone home. Anyway, housing first is prioritizing homelessness and finding housing first before requiring other resources that need to be in place to help someone stay housed. I'm kind of going off on a little tangent on that one. But you can see equal access, emergency services, you have a standard assessment. Answer what you know or what you can about your agency around these areas, which are also required for coordinated entry. Okay, talking in circles there, I apologize. And now last question for coordinated entry, do you have a coordinated entry policy and procedure in place? And if you don't, what are your plans for creating one or implementing it? And I would suggest again, contacting your local community action agency because they're the leads in your area for coordinated entry. And my guess is they have a lot of this information they can share with you. Okay. And finally, for your applications, we also want to get bonus points. If your project is going to serve or assist these different vulnerable populations, chronically homeless, if they have a disabling condition, families that have children, unaccompanied youth, if your clientele, your participants are coming from a place not meant for habitation, living in a car, camping, street, and or persons fleeing from domestic violence. Yes or no, simple drop down as usual. And each of these can be worth a point in the scoring that you're serving. So you might actually serve all of them, or you might serve none of them. Okay. So I'll stop here. I want to go into the scoring sheet so you can see more detail about how each of these will be scored. But first, I want to find out, does anybody have any questions about that part? All right, then I will continue. And I'm going to now, hopefully you can all see a new Excel spreadsheet. Here, get this out of my way. See you, come over. All right, so this is what the evaluator or the individuals who will be reading your application or reading your proposal. Each evaluator, I believe right now, the people who will be evaluating will be reading all of them. And we'll be following this exact same format. And I want to kind of go, I definitely want to go through it so you can see how the different questions are going to be rated. It's almost exactly like the application I just showed you. All right. Agency, contact information. This will be filled out by the evaluator. Of course, they're going to say what kind of project it is. Right. Permanent supportive housing. Is it the only project served in the county? And I just realized somehow I must have skipped that question on the application. So I want to just clarify that real quick. There's a question on the application. I'm going to have to go back in and find it because I think it's it's very important. All right, so here we go on the application. And I might have said a little bit about it. If your project that you're proposing is the only project in the county, you can say it's the only project being served and a point is added to your application. We want to see if we can spread our assistance, our services across more of our 26 counties, right? If your project's in a county where there are other resources similar, you would just say no, and you will not get that point for your project because it's not going to be serving a county that's underserved. So I just wanted to kind of show you that it is on the application. And when we go to the scoring, you'll see it's a minus point if it's a no, and it's a plus point if it's a yes, right? Giving some a little bit of a credit, so to speak, on those who are serving a new county. Here are the threshold requirements. So your evaluator or reader is going to go through and they're going to make absolutely sure here are the 4 exact questions, and they're going to say yes or no. And the same thing, if there's a no, they're not going to continue reading the proposal. All right. That includes having your signed HMIS agreement and your signed coordinated entry agreement. So pretty much the same. All right. Here's what's going to be a little different. The evaluator has every question on your application. What we expect is that the evaluator is going to go through your proposal and they're going to see, does it answer a project need, or excuse me, an unmet need, right? Unmet need, backup documentation, whatever you want to, give to us, but we're going to answer that question either a 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4 up here is saying this answer is clear. It has detail. There are examples or explanations. It's a great, almost perfect answer. The reader's going to give you a 4. All right. If the reader believes that most of the details are there, they're not clear, explanations are supported with only a few details, they're going to give you a 3. And that question, what the number of that question, what the score point can be, is going to be only 75%. And if the reader reads it and it's only a few details, you can see it's a 2, 50% of that score. And then if it's a 1, it basically says there's no answer, it's not relevant. They'll say a 1 in their drop down. And I'm going to actually show you if I can. Stop. I will have to find out what's going on there, but when the evaluator puts the number in there, it will calculate what that question is worth, and you'll start seeing the calculation over here.
David, is it because in the threshold criteria, they're all listed as no?
I don't think I was that smart when I did
Okay,
that,
fair
actually.
enough.
But you know what? Let's try. It's not funny.
Okay.
Wait, it's actually telling me what the problem is. Because I have my sheet protected. So hang on 1 second, because I really do want to show you. Okay. So the reader says 4. All right, that question was worth 10 points. There's your 10 points. Doing exactly what we said, 3 points. You only get 7.5 points on that question. All right. All right, here's your project quality. Exactly the same questions. We asked you to answer a question. Now the reader's going to say, population served, is the population served well-defined, and does it address the unmet need? You answer the question, there's your 4-point scale, you got a 4. That question's worth 5 points, you got your 5. Second question in that section, you answer the question, let's say it's a 3, there's your points, 8.75. 4, 10 points. Every question on your application is exactly in the same order and being asked here for the evaluator. And this allows the evaluator to really look at your answers and determine how well you answer those questions. And then your answers and their evaluation will determine your points. All right. So that's how it's set up all the way through. You can see it looks almost exactly. Questions, even the HMIS, agency information, there's your risk, COC priorities, coordinated entry standards, And then there's your bonus points. So if any of you say yes, you'll see your points starting adding up. Right? And then finally, to help the score, there's going to be little check marks down here that say you might have an error in your scoring, or your scoring looks great, because we really want to make sure that we're following, we're consistent for everyone. And of course, the reader can add some comments at the bottom. Okay. Yeah, so for transparency, it's really important that we show you the scoring. We feel like if you have 5 people reading it and 5 people can answer those 1, 2, 3, 4s, if there's discrepancies, the group gets together, talks about them, and agrees on what that final can be. But it's really close to black and white and unsubjective. So very objective. More objective, because we want to be as fair as possible for everyone who's applying for a new application or a new proposal. And that was a lot. I hope it was clear enough in my roundabout way. So any questions for me when it comes to the application itself? I'm going to go back to Caleb for any of the big picture information or questions that you have. I'm going to throw it out there now.
Hi, my name is Melanie, and this question might be for Caleb. I have a specific question about, or if you could provide more information under the vulnerable populations. It talks about unaccompanied youth, and if there's a clear definition between what shelter services look like versus transitional housing services for youth that are, because if they're unaccompanied and they're under the age of 18, that gets more complicated.
That is a great question. That's something that I would have to do a little bit. That would be a HUD definition that I would have to go and gather and get back to you on. But I will definitely do that. And just so all of you are also aware, we're taking all these questions and making an FAQ document. And so I'll be sure to include that question on there as well.
Thank you, Caleb.
Another question that Christina just asked was, since it's an Excel format, can an electronic signature be okay? And I'm going to assume that would be a yes, based on what's going on around us. So I would say yes, and then that would be a question we can throw into the FAQ also. Yeah.
Are we looking to provide any matches?
Match letters, yes. If there is a requirement for 25% match in all of the funds. That's something that we definitely need to outline more. We didn't discuss that. So yes, there's a 25% match, be it from your agency or the community to help with the services.
And is there a restriction on those match funds? For example, not federal, not state, anything that sort of may be from any source?
Yes, from my understanding, yes.
So I'm going to just kind of jump in here. That's a really good question that's not on the application. So I think that we kind of talking maybe to Caleb and Justina and others about this. It probably would be to our benefit to get an email out that actually is very clear stating that. Because I know that can be really hard to answer, and we didn't address it in the application. So I think that's an important announcement.
Agreed.
Thank you, Michael.
David? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Carolyn. I downloaded the application to my computer, but it does not let me enter any narrative, nor is there a place to upload any budget or any supporting documentation. Did I
Right.
do something wrong? I just copied it from your website.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so that template is for you as a checkoff list. So
Okay.
as you answer the questions, so your narrative is actually going to be like in a Word document.
Okay,
Yeah, so
All right.
write it like a regular, like you would write a narrative for a proposal, and use the template as just your checklist. I answer the question, yes. I answer the question, yes.
okay,
As a guidance for you. Yeah.
okay. So when you actually do the final, there will be a place to upload all of that.
Right. I mean, I think Caleb, as soon as we're done with this part, I believe we're going to go into the deadlines or the dates for submitting the applications and where to send it to. Yeah. And all the
Okay.
attachments.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
David,
Yes.
just for clarification, they should be completing all that narrative and budget stuff in eSnaps. So it will be part of that document.
Okay. Great. So Carolyn, the next session training that we have, I believe is going to be around how to create an account and use eSnaps.
Okay,
So I would, start writing your narrative in Word, and then, and frankly, I don't know enough about eSnaps to guide you on this right now, but you have experts who will. So start writing your answers, and then when you get your account, then there's going to be a way where you can upload the narrative in the way that Justina just mentioned.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Justina.
You're welcome.
David, I have one more question. Where
Yeah.
do I find those two agreements, the coordinated entry agreement and the HMIS agency agreement? Are they on your website?
They are on our website. In fact, I think if you want, I mean, we can start kind of mixing in, bringing Caleb back in, but yeah, he'll direct you into our website, and it has all these documents, the application, all the different pieces that you're asking about. Definitely.
Perfect. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is what our website looks like. And hello, Carolyn. It's good. I'm glad to see you on the call. So in regards to the HUD competition, you can go here to get all the documents that I outlined earlier, including the applications and the how to applies and all of that. If you go to documents, this is where you can find those agreements. It's in the HMS policies and procedures. Here we have that ROCC coordinated entry agreement. We have the other one was, well, this is, I mean, honestly, this is a great place to go for more information.
Yeah, it's the one right before it,
The user.
the ROCC PHP. Is it possible, Caleb, to actually put a link of those two under the HUD competition also?
Yep. Yeah, we could
Okay.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Carolyn, watch for this, and instead of having to go to documents, I think it'll be much easier when Caleb does a link directly from the HUD competition.
Okay.
Because there's a lot here.
Okay.
When you receive the funding, all this will become very familiar to
Oh,
you. I
yes.
promise.
Next-
So you may
next
as well take a
year,
photo
you'll be
now
a
because you might
pro.
get used to it.
And it's also linked in the how to apply. So if you go to the how to apply document and look through there, it'll link you to these documents here.
Thanks, Caleb. I want to make it as easy as possible.
That's right.
Really.
Are there any restrictions on fund usage, like cap for administrative, operating expenses, capacity building, technical assistance, anything like that? Or is it general use?
Senior, you want to take that one?
Yeah, there are limits on what it can be used for, and the best thing to do would be to read the NOFO, because that tells you what it can be used for and how. And also the Hearth Act has some pretty explicit details of how those funds can be used. And if you need a link to that, let me know and I will be happy to send that to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
I just put it in the chat as well.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a really nice 91-page document,
Yeah, don't go through that.
but it's really nice because, you know, they have the chapters and stuff like that. So you could just link to some of those questions. Not seeing something about budget though. Anyway.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, please email me if something does come up. And this will certainly not be the last time that we see each other. Again, in 2 weeks, we'll have kind of an open office hours where you can come in and we can discuss these snaps. So if you're having issues filling out the applications, we can talk about that as well. I believe that Zoom link is out. So if you don't have that Zoom link, let me know and I'll get it to you. The actual packets themselves, like I said in my presentation, we'll be sending that out. We'll put it on our website, the full presentation, and that has links to the various things as well, including where to email all of your packets to. And I'm going to put it in the chat real quick. It's organbos@gmail.com. So these are where the packets go. And it's outlined in all our documents as well. And also look out for that FAQ, which we'll be working on. And email me more questions that we could put on there. It'll be a living document. But thank you so much for joining. David, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I think we're all kind of geeking here a little bit. So just going back to you, Michael. So here's a document on the website about finances and cost and match. So it came directly from the COC application website that Caleb just sent you. And I do see, like I said, there's sources of match, in kind, probably more information than you probably want to know, but it's all right there.
This is perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Caleb, would you be available for a quick phone call when this is over?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again for joining us today, and we really appreciate your interest in joining, getting these COC funds, and we'll talk to you very soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.